الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا رسول الله الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين لله تبارك وتعالى. Now we spoke about the Wahhabi conviction and their reasoning, their way to arrive at their fundamental belief. And we say and confirm that they are mujassim, people who attribute a body to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, al-mujassima. And al-mushabbiha. Now we're going to mention Islamic texts that refute the Wahhabi creed, and we still didn't mention the texts that they refer to. We'll come to talk about that insha'Allah ta'ala. An ignorant person may ask, what does it matter if they believe that Allah has a body? What is wrong with that? The answer is that such a bad creed is against the explicit verses of the Quran, the hadiths, the consensus of the scholars, and as just addressed, the judgment of the mind. Here in this paragraph, this introduction, we want to talk about the Islamic texts. We said such a bad creed is against the explicit texts of the Quran, the hadiths, and the consensus of the scholars. Those are the texts. That's what we mean here. An-nusus ash-shar'iyyah. So we're going to give a reference from each one of these three. And we're not going to give lots of references because remember that we attempted to make the book as simple as we could. And so for sure, it wouldn't be a good idea to mention a lot of references. Allah knows what people understand when they read and how well people understand. That's why the knowledge is not by reading. It's by teachers. إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ. The knowledge is by learning. So we're just going to give one reference, one essential reference. Yani, one essential reference from the ayah, from the Quran, one from the hadith, and something from the ijma'. Not only to keep it simple, we're not going to mention a lot of proofs, but also don't think that you need lots of proofs. What you need is a proof and how to stick to it. That is, you can't let a person just breeze by your evidence. You can't let a person not acknowledge. If you do that, then you'll never get anywhere. You can have a million proofs. You'll just keep talking and talking. This is what Shaykh Abdullah taught us. To use a proof and stick to it. Proof from the Quran that refutes the Wahhabiyy creed. Besides the mental proof, we also refute them by referring to some simple and basic textual proof. It is not necessary to refer to 20 different verses to confirm the validity of the sound creed about the self of Allah. It is not necessary to refer to 20 different verses to explain the right belief about the self of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Meaning, Allah is not a body. So, Allah Ta'ala is not known by hearing about eyes, face, hands, foot, shin. The audio cut out. Okay, where did the audio cut out at? What was the last thing I said before the audio dropped? Okay. Besides the mental proof, we also refute them by referring to some very simple and basic textual proof. Not to go into a lot of detail, and not to go into many proofs. Just a few proofs, and enough detail to make the proofs clear and make you able to use the proof all the way. That is, so that a person can slide through. You stick them. It is not necessary to refer to 20 different verses to confirm the validity of the sound creed about the self of Allah. That means, since they believe that Allah is made of parts, they had to refer to many verses to establish their creed about the bodily self that they worship. However, since Allah is not a body or made of parts, it is enough to refer to one verse to establish the correct understanding about the reality of His self. If you want to know about the self of Allah, you can learn about that in one ayah. Not from 20 different ayat, that putting them together to make a picture. Face, eyes, hands, etc., etc., etc. One verse from the Quran refutes their entire foundation. laysa kathlihi shay. Which means nothing is whatsoever like Him. This verse means that nothing is similar to Allah in any way. It is a decisive verse, a muhkam verse, a verse whose intended meaning is plainly clear. It is explicit, not ambiguous nor figurative. This verse means that nothing is similar to Allah in any way. It is a decisive verse, a verse whose intended meaning is plainly clear. It is explicit, not ambiguous nor figurative. It means that there is nothing common between Allah and His creations. That Allah is not like anything, and nothing is like Him. that every creation is not similar to Allah in any respect. This is the meaning. This is enough to protect you from falling into the blasphemy of likening Allah to His creations, which is shirk. Any questions so far? طيب. This is enough to protect you from falling into the blasphemy of likening Allah to His creations, which is shirk. طيب, the blasphemy of likening Allah to His creations. We've learned that blasphemy is of three types, did we not? That blasphemy comes from the heart. Convictions, blasphemous convictions, and the blasphemy from the heart. That it comes from the tongue, and that it comes from the organs, the extremities, the body parts. طيب. That's one way of looking at blasphemy. That's one way of dividing kufr. There's other ways to divide kufr. So, depending on how you divide kufr, and now we're not going to go into a lesson about that too far, there's a type of kufr called tashbih. Tashbih is likening Allah to the creation. That is a category of blasphemy. And this category of blasphemy falls under another category of blasphemy, of kufr, which is shirk. Because likening Allah to the creations is shirk, is associating something with Allah, or worshipping other than Allah. Take a closer look at this explicit verse. Allah said, laysa kathlihi shay. The word laysa is the word of negation. The first letter prefixed to the next word is the kaf. Laysa, one word. Then the next word has something stuck to the front of it, a kaf. Kathlihi. Kaf with the fatha. A word made of one letter. This kaf is a whole word. It means like. This word is connected to the next word, which is mithl, kamithl. So it's a word made of one letter, simply pronounced as ka. It originally means like. So it's a word, it has a meaning. It is affixed, connected to the word mithl, which means like. The last letter suffixed to the word mithl is the ha. Ha with a kasrah. He. So it is actually pronounced he. It is a third person masculine pronoun, meaning him. Laysa kathlihi. Laysa kathlihi. And it refers to Allah. That ha, he, this is the reference to Allah. Him, meaning Allah. Laysa kathlihi shay. The last word in the verse is shay, which means thing. It is a general, indefinite term referring to all of the creations. Anything, a thing, shay, something. It's indefinite and general. Anything called a thing, he's not like it. It is easily noticed that Allah revealed the word mithli in this verse, with the addition of revealing the kaf, kamithli. Mithl means like, kaf means like, kamithl, laysa kamithli, he, shay. The negation of this combination, negating both the kaf and the mithl, the negation of this combination emphatically denies, emphatically makes emphasis, intensifies, emphatically denies any likeness to him. If the kaf were removed, so had it said, laysa mithlahu shay, or had it said, laysa shay'un mithlah, it would still mean that nothing is like him. However, Allah revealed the kaf added to the mithl. It's an addition, and this emphasizes the meaning that nothing is similar to him. زائدة الكاف حرف جر زائد للتوكيد. It is easily noticed that Allah revealed the word mithl in this verse, with the addition of revealing the kaf. This emphasizes the meaning that nothing is similar to him. Furthermore, the term shay is indefinite, general, and whenever an indefinite noun is presented in a negative context, yani, whenever something indefinite is being negated, whenever something general and non-specific is being negated, whenever an indefinite noun is presented in a negative context, then the meaning is an all-inclusive negation. An all-inclusive negation. In other words, look at the difference between saying he is not like a thing and he is not like the thing. The first of these two is more inclusive. He is not like a thing, because the term thing is indefinite. From this, we can know that Allah is clear of having or being a body, and is clear of organs, motion, places, directions, and change. According to the judgment of the mind, attributes such as those would draw similarities between Allah and His creation. Any question? Please. So that's our essential reference from the Quran. For all the stuff they say, many other verses negate likeness between Allah and His creations, like Al-Ikhlas 4, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. Never has there been one equal to Him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ كُفُوًا لَهُ. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ كُفُوًا لَهُ. There was never for Him an equal. Or the 65th verse of Surah Maryam, هَلْ تَعْلَمُ لَهُ سَمِيًّا, posing the rhetorical question, do you know of anything similar to him? There is also فَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ الْأَمْثَالِ فَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ الْأَمْثَالِ. Do not make examples for Allah. That means do not make similars for Allah. And فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا. Do not make contenders for Allah. That is, similars who oppose Him. Don't consider that anyone or anything is like Allah and opposing Him or against Him. However, laysa kathlihi shay, nothing is whatsoever like Him, is the most explicit verse in the Quran that clears Allah from resembling the creations. That's why the scholars repeated this ayah in particular whenever they talked about tanzih. laysa kathlihi shay. Because of the aforementioned emphasis. Whoever is lost in the ocean of confusion from the prevalent ignorance among today's Muslims, let this verse be his plank of wood for staying afloat. Never liken Allah to His creations, no matter how many verses a wahhabiyy may bring to you to convince you that Allah is like a body. We say that it is not permissible to interpret any text in a way that attributes bodily characteristics to Allah, because doing that will make the verses of the Quran pardon me. We say that it is not permissible to interpret any text in a way that attributes bodily characteristics to Allah, because doing that will make the verses of the Quran contradictory, which is impossible. So notice what we did here. We have a basic reference, and then for your pleasure, qad yuqal, you were given a few more verses that clear Allah from the creation, but not so that you can talk to the person and say to him every verse that you know. We say that it is not permissible to interpret any text in a way that attributes bodily characteristics to Allah, because doing that will make the verses of the Quran contradictory, which is impossible. To say nothing is like Him, yet to attribute to Him place and direction, and change, and organs, pieces, composition. For the Wahhabis, this contradiction is minute, acceptable, and insignificant, because they do not believe that logic is associated with belief. They don't believe that they have to apply any rationale to what they've arrived at. They believe that it is enough for them to just take the verses of the Quran as they are. No matter what that may mentally lead to, no matter what that might mentally lead to, that doesn't matter. This is marad. This is the sickness. It's similar to a Christian belief if you find it hard to understand or hard to believe. Didn't the Christians say God is one and God is three at the same time? And they accept that for themselves? And they know that it doesn't make any sense? Didn't they say God is the Son and God is the Father at the same time? This is tashbih. That's what happens when you believe in tashbih. When you believe in likening Allah to the creation. It'll warp your mind. It will mess you up. It will affect your mind. The priority of the decisive verses over the ambiguous. As mentioned, laysa kathlihi shay, nothing is whatsoever like him, is a decisive verse. And again, a decisive verse is a verse that can only have one interpretation according to the Arabic language. That should be clear by now. It is important to know the merit Allah gave to the decisive verses. In Al Imran, verse 7, Allah told us, Minhu ayatun muhkamat, hunna ummul kitabi wa ukharu mutashabihat. We mentioned this verse previously. It means within the book are decisive verses. They are the base of the book, the reference for the book. And other verses are ambiguous, susceptible to more than one meaning, mutashabih. The mutashabih verses are not the base of the book, but the Wahhabis act as if they are, which shows that they do not understand the true meaning of the verse. This verse, minhu ayatun muhkamat, hunna ummul kitabi wa ukharu mutashabihat. They don't understand the true meaning of this verse. That is, they don't understand the true application of this verse. They don't know how to truly apply this verse by putting the muhkam verses ahead of the mutashabih verses. Rather, they've done the opposite. They start with Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. They start with Hadith al-Jariyah, the hadith of the slave girl. The mutashabih verses are not the base of the book, but the Wahhabis act as if they are, which shows that they do not understand the true meaning of this verse. This verse from Al Imran, nor the true meaning of laysa kathlihi shay. They don't know how to apply the first verse, and they don't know the true meaning of laysa kathlihi shay. They say it with their tongues, but they don't understand what it properly means. The true Sunni Muslims follow the rule of Allah that proves that the decisive verses are the base of the book. They base their belief on laysa kathlihi shay, the Sunni Muslims, because it is a decisive verse. Then, when encountering attributes of Allah in the Quran, like al-yad, al-ayn, al-wajh, al-istiwa, etc., whose literal meanings would liken Allah to the creations, They interpret them in a way that does not give Allah a body or an attribute of a body. This is the right way. This is the application of minhu ayatun muhkamat. From the Quran there are decisive verses. Hunna ummul kitab. They are the of the book. That means they are the reference of the book. Wa ukharu mutashabihat. And other verses are ambiguous. That is, verses that are not the base of the book are ambiguous. Refer them back to the of the kitab. So what does ahlus-sunnah do? Because laysa kathlihi shay is very explicit, then when encountering attributes of Allah like al-yad, al-ayn, al-wajh, al-istiwa, etc., whose literal meanings would liken Allah to the creations, because literally by their apparent meanings they are hand and eye and face, and istiwa has numerous meanings. It has numerous meanings. It has befitting meanings for Allah. It has numerous physical meanings. They, meaning ahlus-sunnah, interpret them in a way that does not give Allah a body or an attribute of a body. That is, so they say, at the least, they say al-yad is not by the apparent meaning. Al-ayn is not by the apparent meaning. The wajh is not by the apparent meaning. The istiwa is not by the apparent meaning. The Wahhabiyy say it is by the apparent meaning. That's the fundamental difference. When they say it's by the apparent meaning, but it's not like the creation, for us this is invalid. That's a contradiction. For them to say it's not, for them to say it is by the apparent meaning and it's not like the creation, this is a contradiction. What's correct is that it is not by the apparent meaning, because Allah laysa kathlihi shay, because nothing is like Allah. The apparent meaning is the creation meaning. These words can have more than one meaning, as will be seen in the second chapter, if Allah will. This is the straight and sound way which stations the decisive verses as the base of the book. Again, the Wahhabiyy way is backwards, the other way. They start with Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, and the hadith of the slave girl, which is coming. And then they explain laysa kathlihi shay in a way, not like the way we explained it, in a way that enabled them to take the apparent meaning of the hadith of the slave girl and istiwa. So they didn't put laysa kathlihi shay first. Any question? Is that clear? Yes, please. He said, what do you mean that they start with those verses, with those other verses first? For example, slave girl. Because Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, to them it means Allah rose over the throne. And among them are those who said Allah sat on the throne. And among them are those who say Allah is firmly established on the throne. So how can they say that and still say laysa kathlihi shay? By not explaining laysa kathlihi shay first, by explaining this one first, and then saying, and it's not like the creation. Otherwise, Explain laysa kathlihi shay first. It means nothing is like him in any way, so he's not attributed with any places or directions or shapes or forms or pieces or parts or changing or motion or stillness or connection or separation or anything that's an attribute of the creation. So if you understand that, then there's no way you're going to say he is firmly established on the throne, or that he sits on the throne, or that he's above the throne. And they mean by the apparent meaning. They don't mean majestic. They don't mean greatness. They mean physically high, even if they don't say the word physical. Because they don't mean the majestic one. They say as it is. We take it as it appears. Ala al-zahir, ala al-haqiqah. This means they take it by the literal meaning. Then, after taking it by the literal meaning, they say, laysa kathlihi shay. Yani, even if he actually starts by saying laysa kathlihi shay, even if that's the first verse he mentions, in his conviction, it's not the fundamental ayah. The fundamental ayah is Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, according to him. Extra detail. Another question coming? He says, so the verses you mentioned are there only proofs to use to argue? We'll talk about those references they use, inshallah, in the second chapter. It's coming soon. Tayyib, extra detail, the Wahhabi misinterpretation. How do they explain laysa kathlihi shay, or what is documented and transferred from their Imam about this issue? The wahhabiyy have tricks to avoid being cornered by this verse, of course. Among them is that they say, when reciting this verse, you should not stop there. That is, when reciting laysa kathlihi shay, you can't stop there. Rather, you must continue and read the rest of the verse. ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. From there, they will accuse you of distorting the meaning of the verse by saying, just as it is valid that he hears and sees while nothing is like him, it is valid that he has a face and hands while nothing is like him. Did you understand that? Let me repeat his fallacy. The Wahhabi will say to you, laysa kamithlihi shay, yes, but you're not supposed to stop there, which is not true. We'll talk about that. All throughout the books, all throughout the ages, the ulama said, laysa kamithlihi shay. Yes, they said, وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ also, of course. Anyway, we'll come to that. So he'll say, you can't stop there, laysa kamithlihi shay. He'll say, in fact, you're stopping there because of your deviance. He'll say, why are you hiding that Allah said right after that, وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. He's the one who hears and sees. So if he can hear and see and not be like the creation, then he can have face and eyes and stuff without being like the creation. Sorry. The answer for that is in two steps. The first is to prove the validity of reciting laysa kathlihi shay and stopping there. That is achieved in two ways. The first is the fact that the Wahhabi has no proof that it is invalid to stop the recitation where we have stopped. Yani, if he says you can't stop there, tell him, prove it. The scholars have always mentioned this amount of the verse, even Ibn Taymiyyah in some places. And if one looked into the book of the Quran, he would find a sign over the top of the verse, proving that the reciter could stop there. But that's not in every mushaf. It looks like there's a typo here. There's an extra word in there. It says even Ibn Taymiyyah in some places, and if one looked into the book of the Quran, he would find a sign over the top of the verse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, take that extra word out. I just took it out. Yeah, it's just been omitted. There would be nothing left but for the Wahhabi to say that's for the recitation, not the meaning. So then you respond by saying, would it be valid for the recitation to give an invalid meaning? Of course not. The second way to foil the Wahhabi's attempt to dodge this verse's ruling is to say to him, even if we recited the saying, laysa kathlihi shay'un wa huwa as-sami'ul basir, nothing is whatsoever like him and he hears and sees, that is not the beginning of the verse itself. This is the end of a longer verse. So what made it permissible for you to start at laysa kathlihi shay? Nothing is whatsoever like him, when it is in itself the continuation of the previous statements? Why have you not recited the entire verse from its beginning to its end? If he says because this is the part of the verse related to our topic, then we answer for the same reason we recited to the amount that we have recited. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. That's if anyone, if that wasn't clear for anyone, then review it, inshallah. The second step is to clarify that the hearing and sight of Allah are not by eyes and ears, have no beginning or end, and are not restricted to time, direction, volume, or light, and thus do not resemble the hearing and sight of the creation. Here, this answer is very, very, very important. This, most likely, this is what you want. You don't have to go into this thing we just talked about. You could afford to skip that to get to something that's more important. So let me back up a little bit. If the Wahhabi says, laysa kamithlihi shay, yes, but that's not the end of the ayah. And you're only stopping there out of your deviance, because you're trying to hide the fact that right after Allah negated any resemblance to himself, he said, وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. He's the one who hears and sees. So he said that nothing is like him and he hears and sees. And just as it's valid that he hears and sees while nothing is like him, it's valid that he has a face and hands and eyes and nothing is like him. So this answer now is very important. Give them this answer first. The second step is to clarify that the hearing and sight of Allah are not by eyes and ears, have no beginning or end, and are not restricted to time, direction, volume, or light, and thus do not resemble the hearing and sight of the creations. The second step is to clarify that the hearing and sight of Allah are not by eyes and ears. This is not like the creation. Have no beginning or end, are not restricted to time or direction. He doesn't look into a direction. He doesn't hear things from direction. Sound, he's not a body that sound waves come to him and then he locates the direction of the sound and its volume. Or light. He doesn't see by light like the creation. And thus, his hearing and sight do not resemble the hearing and sight of the creation. This is our explanation for that. Laysa kathlihi shay. Nothing is whatsoever like him. He's not a body. Wahhuwa السَّمِيعُ and he's the one who hears and sees. It must be that he hears and sees unlike the creation. So his hearing is without ears and without needing sound waves, and his sight is without eyes and without needing light. It's unlike the creation. An uncreated hearing, eternal and everlasting hearing, uncreated, eternal and everlasting sight. But a literal hand can't be not created because it's a piece. Pieces are created. A literal face is a piece. Pieces are created. The scholar said that this was the benefit of being mentioned after the confirmation that he does not resemble anything. In other words, Allah told us in his book, laysa kathlihi shay, which means nothing is whatsoever like him. Then after knowing that he does not resemble anything, we are informed that وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, he is the one who hears and sees, so that we would know that his hearing and sight are different from that of the creations. This is the key for answering their question to us. Why is it valid for you to say that Allah has hearing, sight, knowledge, and power, but you prevent us from saying that he has hands, fingers, eyes, and face? You can respond, meaning among the answers is to say, you can respond by saying that hearing, sight, knowledge, and power do not necessitate a body. They are not pieces. Hearing is not a piece. It's not a segment. They are meanings that do not dictate composition and physical structure. Concepts. Yani, hearing is a meaning, it's a concept. Because, for example, the sound itself is not the hearing. The sound is not the hearing, because there's sounds and people don't hear. The ear is not the hearing, also. The airwaves is not the hearing. The impact is not the hearing. What is the hearing? It's a ma'na, it's a concept. So, There is no contradiction. It is valid to say that Allah is attributed with life, power, knowledge, will, sight, hearing, and speech. We'll talk about the speech with details, inshallah, later. That is speech that is not composed. So it's not a language. It's not a sound. It's not something you can imagine. And with that uncreated speech, he speaks. He is a speaker. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can respond by saying that hearing, sight, knowledge, and power do not necessitate a body. They are meanings that do not dictate composition and physical structure. Is that clear so far, brothers and sisters? Any question about that? As for their claim of a face and hands, etc. 1. If they say that they are real literal face and hands, then they have likened Allah to the creation, because real literal face and hands require composition and physical structure. If they say that they are not literal, which they don't say, then they have made ta'wil. They have agreed with us. They are not literal. Is that one clear? Clear, brothers and sisters? 2. If they say that they do not know the meanings of face and hands in reference to Allah, then we ask them how they could translate something without knowing its meaning. Is that clear? That's actually quite ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, that's actually a pretty devastating question. Which is only triggered by that person's stupidity. That because he's defending a wrong creed, it took him to this hole. If he says, and they say sometimes, very often, we do not know the meanings of face and hands in reference to Allah, then we ask them how they could translate something without knowing its meaning. And we don't translate, by the way. What do we say Allah is attributed with? Yad, Ain, Wajh. So, we're not the deviant people. We're not the ones who didn't do what the scholars said when they said, Amirruha kama ja'at bila kayf, pass them on as they came without a how. 3. If they say that they translated the Arabic terms into their English counterparts, so if his answer to this question, which really he shouldn't even try to answer this question, he should stop and fix his conviction. But if he says, to dig the hole deeper, if they say that they translated the Arabic terms into their English counterparts, after saying he doesn't know what it means, we tell them that the Arabic terms have many possible meanings. So the intended meanings must be translated according to the context, not the mere word by its face value. Is that clear, brothers and sisters? These words they chose can have numerous meanings. What made them choose one meaning over the other meaning? It needs to be explained according to the context. And why is he taking the apparent meaning? Because that's his conviction. The reason he's choosing the apparent meaning, because that's his conviction. His conviction is that he has to take the apparent meaning. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. 4. If they choose to use only the Arabic words, such as al-wajh and al-yad, without confirming any specific meanings for them, except that they are attributes of Allah and that Allah knows about them, then they have complied with us. They said what we say. That's what we say. We say al-wajh and al-yad, Allah knows what they mean, and we don't translate them. Or, in some verses, the context makes it clear. These words can have more than one meaning. They don't mean the same thing every time. So those 4 points were clear, brothers and sisters. So don't feel stuck if the Wahhabi says to you, just like it's valid to say he has hearing and sight, it's valid to say he has face and eyes and hands. That might take some studying, but it's clear and straight. That is, even if you understood what I said right now, brothers and sisters, even if I just got through that whole ordeal without confusing you, think about it and study it, review the text itself, read it over 3 times, 5 times, and let the meaning sink in very well. The origin of their twisted understanding of the verse laysa kathlihi shay وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, nothing is whatsoever like him and he hears and sees, is taken from their grandfather Ibn Taymiyyah, who confessed that he likens Allah to the creation. He confessed that he likens Allah to the creation, and he said it explicitly, believe it or not, when he said in his book Bughyatul Murtad, قال تعالى ليس كمثله شيء فنزه or فنزه وهو السميع البصير فشبه أو فشبه، وهي أعظم آية أنزلت في التنزيه ومع ذلك لم تخلو عن التشبيه. أعوذ بالله. He said, the Exalted said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, nothing is whatsoever like him, and thereby he was exalted from resemblance. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, and he hears and sees, and thus he was likened. That's what he said, and thus he was likened. It's underlined there. That underlined word in the Arabic text, that's it. That's kufr, that's explicit kufr. To liken Allah to the creations is explicit kufr. For a Wahhabi, had anyone else said it, it would have been kufr. But if Ibn Taymiyyah said it, it's not kufr. And by the way, your average Wahhabi doesn't know lots of stuff that Ibn Taymiyyah said. Your average Wahhabi thinks that Ibn Taymiyyah was a very straight scholar. He said lots of loony things, off the wall. So he said, the Exalted said, laysa kathlihi shay, nothing is whatsoever like him, and thereby he was exalted from resemblance. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, and he hears and sees, and thus he was likened. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. This, he continues to say, this is the greatest verse revealed in clearing Allah from resemblance to the creation, and despite that, it was not devoid of likening him to others. ومع ذلك لم تخلو عن التشبيه. The reality of Ibn Taymiyyah's claim is that the Quran contradicts itself. So we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala. Any question?